Okay, so here's a thing that's been vexing me for a few years now. It's about coming into hospital for a day surgery list. Now, if you are coming in for a small operation, which might take half an hour in the operating theatre, it might be reasonable to think that you could come in maybe half an hour before the operation and go home half an hour after the operation. The problem is that if you're going to a formal operating theatre environment, you need to be seen by either the anaesthetist or the surgeon beforehand to have a local anaesthetic put in, and you need to fill in a consent form and be marked. The standard rules. You have to have a mark on your hand, you have to be changed into a gown for a formal operating theatre, and you have to sign a consent form, and you have to have met the anaesthetist. Now that process takes about 15-20 minutes usually. Now, if a surgeon goes to the operating room and starts operating on his first patient after having done that process on the first patient, and then has to finish that operation and then leave the operating room environment, go and see the patient on the ward, do a consent form, anaesthetist has to meet the patient, mark the patient, answer any other questions that the patient may have, and then go back to the operating theatre and say, now you can send the porters. That's about half an hour of delay between cases. Whereas if all the patients on that list, 2, 3, 4 patients on that list have already been marked and consented and seen by the anaesthetist or anaesthetized, then when you're finishing an operation, you can say to the nurses, would you please ask the porters to send for the next patient and bring the patient down so that when we finish this case, you can do all the cleaning up in the operating theatre, and by the time I've written the operation note, we'll be in a position where we can take the next patient in directly. And so that's why patients have to be brought in a batch. So basically, you have to come in for an afternoon list. You'd have to come in at, say, 12 o'clock, see the surgeon, have the nurses change you, answer any questions, see the anaesthetist. Then you go down 1 o'clock for a 1:30 start to the operating room. But you might be the 3rd or the 4th patient on the list, and then you'd have to wait for the operations before you to happen, and they might, generally, small day cases would take an hour for that whole process to play through, and by the time you come to the 4th patient, it's often 4 o'clock or 4:30, and that's a difficult issue for us to get around. I don't see a better way, or we put a break in the middle of the list, and then the anaesthetist and I would go and see the patient. Behind me is London Bridge Hospital. We did try doing walk-in, walk-out theatres for a while, but there wasn't enough demand for that. That was just sort of one patient comes in, see them, clerk, consent form, mark an anaesthetic, straight in the operating theatre, do the operation, back out again. There's often a big distance as well between the operating theatre and where the patient is waiting for the operation, and that is an issue sometimes as well. There's London Bridge Hospital, beautiful St Olave's House, the main building, and there's a wharf building behind, which is where we do the operations. So I hope that helps you understand why you might have to wait for such a long time for an operation on a minor ops list.